Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today's video, we will be going over and covering my predictions for Alderon Games' official Microraptor. So, anyway, now that you know why you're here, let's get started, shall we? Alright, so, Microraptor, the famous coming soon dinosaur. That thing has been coming soon for so long. When does the word soon lose all meaning? I don't know. Anyway, it's a dinosaur that I, personally, am quite excited for. Not really because I like the dinosaur. Microraptor, small, very annoying in Ark. Really annoying in Ark, actually. But just a dinosaur in general that I don't really care about too much. However, it will bring, apparently, some new mechanics. That being gliding and climbing. Now, not only does that add something new to the game, the vanilla game, but it will also eventually add more capabilities for mods. You know, like, could you imagine someone makes a mod that can glide or, you know, climb onto rocks and stuff, hang from ceilings maybe? I don't know. I don't know what that would be. Maybe it could be like the Tarantula mod that's coming out, the Gigarachne, whatever it is. Maybe. Who knows? Anyway, something that I couldn't find any information on, I don't even think we have any, is the abilities. So, today, that is what I will be trying to figure out, or kind of, you know, doing my own little, this is what I think it would have type thing. So, anyway, now that we've got all that out of the way with, let's start with its passives. So, it being an incredibly small dinosaur, I can imagine it will have Lucky Feather. If you don't know what this ability does, basically, it allows you to survive a fatal hit if your health is above a certain amount. I think it's like 40 something percent or 70%, I don't know. All I know is that if your health is above a certain amount and you get bit by, let's say, a T-Rex and that would have killed you, you survive on 1 HP and it keeps you out of combat and give you damage immunity for about 10 seconds, I think. Anyway, it also has a 5-minute cooldown. Now, if you think, oh, that ability seems pretty difficult to put in the game, Orca, Ramphorhynchus already has it. So, you know, considering I think Micro is going to be around ramp size, I'm not 100% sure. I don't see why Microraptor wouldn't have it. Anyway, the next passive I can see Microraptor having is something to do with gliding. And, you know, something a bit like this. When gliding for 5 seconds, gain a second jump to use while gliding to push you up higher. This is something that I could see kind of working like a double jump, except instead of actually jumping, it more so flaps its little arms with the feathers, and it maybe lifts itself up a little bit. And it could be used whilst you're gliding, so you can glide super far. And, you know, if I was to add this in the game, I'd probably call it something like Second Leap, or something like that. I don't know, just gliding, if it does glide, you know, I hope it does, if it does, I think it would be cool if you, like, climbed from a pretty mid-sized tree, glided a little bit, and then after that you get to, like, flap your wings up, jump again in the air, get a bit more air, and maybe make it over, like, a river or something. I think that could be pretty cool. Anyway, the next thing to cover would be the generic slot, which I can imagine Micro literally just being the same as Ramp there, just having a basic bite that only harms critters. For now, that's called foreshadowing. Now, onto the fun stuff. Head slots. The first thing I'd expect Microraptor to have would be some sort of bite it can be used whilst pounced onto another creature or dinosaur. And this bite would refill the Microraptor's hunger a little bit, you know, very slowly. Maybe like eating parasites or insects off of larger dinosaurs. I feel like an ability like this would be named Parasitic Feeder. It might be a bit too hard to add to the game, I'm not sure. But I think it would be cool. It could be like that scene of the Ramphorhynchus eating bugs off the Diplodocus, except it's a little Microraptor eating bugs off of like a T-Rex or an Eotrike. I don't know. Could be cool. Could be cool. Let me know in the comments how you feel about that. Anyway, that is the senses. Oh no, sorry. That is the passives and the head slot out the way with. Onto senses. I think it'd be cool if it had a sense called the Swarm, which would stack up to 4. You gain 1 stack per Microraptor in your group with this equipped, and what the ability would do is allow Microraptor's basic bite to deal low damage to anything under 3,500 combat weight. So something like Alioramus. It'd only deal about 30 to 40 damage, with a 1.5 second cooldown. Now, 30 to 40 damage sounds pretty high, but I can imagine Microraptor is not going to weigh a lot, so it's gonna basically be doing nothing. But you'd need 4 of them in a group. Once you have 4 and they all have this equipped, their basic bite will do actual damage to players. I think that could be cool. You know, maybe if it's possible, I would like to see that in the game because it'd make it different from Ramp, because Ramp just can't hurt you unless it like barrel rolls and it dies. Poor thing. Anyway, another sense could be Airborne, which allows you to use less stamina when gliding by 10%. It'd be just like a passive thing, like you equip it as a sense and bam, that's it. And the last sense might be Density, which makes Microraptor do more damage and take less damage from critters. However, you fall 10% faster when gliding. So my idea with this was basically critters are annoying. They're really strong for really small things to fight. Like I'm talking about the Nonicus size or the modded Compy size. You know, critters, they can be a pain. And when you're that small, you can only scavenge or eat critters. So this could, you know, you could maybe swap off one of the other senses when you see a critter, kill it really quickly, sit down, swap it off again. Maybe, I don't know, could be useful. Anyway, next on the list would be front limbs. Now, Microraptor being incredibly small, like, I can only see it having one ability here. It's not going to be slapping anything with its arms. And the ability I can think of would be a dash type ability called something like Quick Jolt, maybe? I don't know. That's just what I could come up with. Or something where if it used it on land, it would boost it forwards a little bit. But in the air while gliding, it would cause you to do a little dive to then gain some more speed. You could even combo this with the second leap type ability I mentioned. So you would do this in the air, you know, a little dive down, get some speed, and then do the double leap. You know, could be cool, could be. Travel some far distances, a little glider. I don't know. The direction I wanted to go with this was rather than making it just a constant buffer, debuffer, I wanted it to focus more on maneuverability. Because I have a feeling that is what Microraptor is going to be like, where it just focuses on how it moves around the map and how it can avoid players or maybe duck in for a little snack every now and then. That's how I imagine Microraptor playing. I don't imagine it, you know, being like a group of Latins where they shred a T-Rex by pounce spamming it. I can't imagine that. Anyway, onto metabolisms. So, scavenger and hypercarnivore, they'd be normal. But a new diet called insectivore, which would allow Microraptor to eat insects, it would have low water drain and high hunger drain. It would only be able to eat insects, by the way. Obviously, you know, with that passive, or not passive, the generic bite I mentioned earlier, no, the head slot bite, getting confused, Orca. The head slot bite I mentioned, where if it pounces onto you and bites you, it could eat from you. That obviously will work. But as an actual diet, I think only eating insects, I think that makes sense, you know? It's not like it's going to go fishing like Ramp, but it also isn't going to be focusing on hunting things. Very tiny, tiny little raptor. Anyway, onto hides. So, hollow bones, which would reduce your jump stamina and gliding cost by 15%. So what hollow bones does in the vanilla game currently, I think it's on like Latin or something, it just makes your jump stamina cost 20% less. I reduced that by 5%, so it's 15, because it would also reduce your gliding cost. Also, a new hide called Resilient Bird. Gain 20% increased heal rate on status effects, and the status healing is not decreased when gliding or trying. So basically what this would allow is, if let's say you have Venom, or Bleed, or, you know, Fracture maybe, whilst you have this equipped, if you're trotting, gliding, you would have the same, like, status heal rate as if you were standing still. Because normally in the game, when you walk around with a status effect, it increases the faster you're moving. So, you know, walking, it's about the same as standing still. Trotting, it increases the amount you have, and then sprinting increases it by a long shot. And the way the game does that, by the way, is it just reduces your heal rate during those certain movements. So this would just cancel that out, which would mean you could trot or glide and heal the bleed as if you were standing still. Something like that. I don't know. It could be cool. And especially with the annoying status effects like Venom, which can pile on an insane amount, this would basically mean that you don't need to sit forever as a fast, agile, small dinosaur just to get rid of some Venom. I think that could be cool. Cool? Cool? I think it'd be cool. Could be cool. Anyway, on to the back limb, or the leg slot, as it was once called. So, first off, pounce and scatter. So it can jump on something pretty easily, and then scatter, it lets you jump off really high after you've pounced on something. Those two could either be in one ability or two separate back limbs. I'm not sure, but pounce and scatter, definitely for Microraptor. You could even, pounce onto something, fight it a little bit with your group, and then scatter and glide away. That would be cool. As well as a new one called Natural Grip, which would increase your turning by 5% and your climbing speed by 10%. Now, this is 100% relying on if Microraptor actually can climb. Hopefully, I really am praying that it can. I would love to have a climbing mechanic in the game. The Isle did it, so hopefully Path of Titans can do it. I know that it's not the Isle, I know they're not the same game, but it would be really cool to have, you know? I think it would be probably one of the best things to have. I'm probably going to mention it in another video, but anyway, onto the tail slot. I can only think of one thing to have for the tail slot. I don't really want it to have 2 dashes or anything like a tail attack. So, Featherweight lets you survive any fatal fall with 1 HP. This is also in the game. Latin has this. But yeah, basically it works like a passive. You equip it, you can survive any fall with 1 HP. It does have a cooldown, I'm not sure how long that is though. Anyway, on to the voice buffs, the final part of something hit. Now, considering Microraptor can't fight much, I think it would be more of a group buffer and debuffer. I know earlier I said I didn't want it to be that, but it's going to have something, let's be honest. It's going to have something that buffs or debuffs something. So, starting with Mob Rally, but a bit custom. So, only usable when you have a stack of 4 of the Swarm, and it increases damage by 15%, stackable up to 3 times. If you think that's insane, Latin's is 20% and stacks up to 10 times. Why? I have no idea. Why does Latin need 200% more damage? Let alone 10 of them. No idea on that. Then we also have Infected Diet. So, after eating insects with Insectivore, you can use this voice buff when pounced on a creature to give them a status effect, which will reduce their status effect heal rate, and it lasts for 2 minutes. It reduces it by 15%. So the way this would work is, you'd find like some insects. Insects, they're not very healthy for most animals. I mean, they're okay. But then you also have poisonous ones, like poisonous ants, bees. I don't know, man. Poisonous insects, they exist. So my idea for this was like, Microraptor eats those, it's fine because it's normally used to eating those. But if it then bites onto something, it's probably going to pass something on, maybe? Maybe? I don't know. It could work, though. It could work. So all it would do is, like, reduce your heal rate for, like, Bone Break, Fracture, Bleed, Venom, Toxin, all that by 15%. Could be cool. I don't know. Okay, so that about rounds this video up. That is basically all I could think of. And, I did purposely leave out cooldowns on most of the abilities, since I'm not 100% on balancing anymore. By the time this thing even gets released, we might have completely new balancing, Apexes might have, like, 2 health and do 1,000,000 damage. Who knows? I don't. But yeah, that's why I didn't put, like, the cooldowns on things. Anyway, that is going to be everything. I would have covered stats, but I'm pretty sure it's just going to be Ramp or Deinonychus, or somewhere in between that, in terms of strength. I'm not 100% sure of how it will be in size terms in-game. But anyway, yes, that is everything. If you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. Please make sure you like, and also subscribe if you're not. It helps me out a lot. Check the description for the linky to my Discord. We're nearly at 100 members. Nearly. Anyway, take care, everyone. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.